like to give you the instructions for this portion of the debate. This debate will be 50 minutes long. The speaking order has already been decided by a flip of the coin, and Mr. Truax will go first. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. If they feel, the other candidate feels that they need to rebut because their name was raised in the answer, or they feel that there's something that they need to address, they will have 45 seconds to be able to rebut. A yellow card will be raised when they're at 50% of their time that is left. A red card will be raised when the time has expired. We will also ring the bell. That is your Hello? Okay. That will be your indication that time has expired. We do have 2 microphones. If we're having problems with the microphones, please share. And there is water if you need to be able to quench your thirst during the discussion. The first question is for Mr. Truax. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. Florida's state minimum wage is $8.25 per hour. There has been a lot of discussion as to whether the federal and state minimum wages are livable. What is your position on the current minimum wage?
First, I want to say, hand me that microphone. I want to say thank you to the Delta Sigma sorority and for everybody else coming out tonight. You're missing out on some riveting television, I'm sure, and the 6 o'clock news. I want to thank you again for that. As far as the minimum wage for the state and the area, the federal wage, I think combined, it's a good start. I think $15 an hour is a good start for the minimum wage. I don't believe that $7 an hour, back when I was making minimum wage, mopping floors and scrubbing pots in kitchens at $3.33 an hour, was not a livable wage. The current wage is not enough to cover rent, not enough to cover gas, not enough to cover the basic utilities of home, and it takes more than 2 people at the minimum wage to even cover the rent for a 1-bedroom apartment. So I don't believe that those rates are livable at all at the moment.
Mr. Holden, what is your position on the current minimum wage?
Thank you. Thank you, Deltas, for sponsoring this event. Thank you, Madam President. It clearly is not a livable wage and hasn't been for many years. $15 is a floor. In areas such as this district, the 19th district, $15 an hour is barely livable if 2 people are earning that and pooling their resources. But we also have to understand there's a larger opportunity here. When people make a living wage, the economy flourishes because they spend that money in their community. It creates jobs, it creates businesses, and it creates prosperity for all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Holden, what will you do to assist the economic circumstances of the state of Florida and your constituents?
So we're in a crisis. We're in a number of crises. That's the reason I'm running for Congress, because this country is in real peril, not just from what's coming out of the White House, but also because we have a Republican Congress that is unwilling at any point to stand up to this administration. Our economic prosperity is really unequal. We have a very small layer of extremely wealthy people, including Francis Rooney, and then we have the bulk of Americans who are struggling just to make ends meet. So the first thing that we must do is to undo the terrible tax bill that was passed by this Congress that blew a $1.8 trillion hole in our deficit. We're going to have to borrow, I believe, $1 trillion this year and next year just to fill that hole. So we need to bring that money away from the 1% of the 1% and return it to working Americans. That is number one. Number two, we have to continue to do the things that we used to do in the 70s and the 60s and into the 80s of investing in public education at every level. When people complain that young folks today, aren't working hard enough to get an education, they're really not being honest about the facts, because when the Fox News generation was going through college, you could work your way through college, because college cost $2,000 a year because we invested. Thank you.
Mr. Truax, on February 14, 2018, a gunman opened fire at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, with an AR-15 style rifle. He killed 17 individuals and injured 17 others. This is just but one example of the mass shooting and gun violence problem in our nation. Do you believe that there is anything from a federal legislative standpoint that can be done to address this problem?
You bet there is. I got the endorsement from the gun sense candidates and the Moms Demand Action. Immediately, we can put a ban on assault weapons, and we can put a tax on bullets. We can do things like that. We can also put a ban on the bump stocks immediately. Those are things that we can make right away to limit the number of bullets and guns that are out there. The other thing that's key, as soon as my opponent got elected, was he lifted the ban on mental health background checks for folks with mental health and diagnoses that need to have, that no longer need that. So if somebody has a mental diagnosis or a mental health instance, or they've been Baker acted in the past, they can go straight to the gun store and there's no check to see if that person has any kind of mental illness that would make them a danger to self or others, or has made them a danger to self or others in the past. So those are the kind of legislation moves we can make right away when I'm elected in office. Not just undoing what they've done, but then put stricter rules in place. Right now, what's happening is that more guns equal more deaths. And so I'm not for taking away all the guns, because guns are helpful for protection and sometimes for hunting to survive. My father had a rifle in West Virginia, and when he was on strike for 111 days with the coal miners union, if he didn't get that deer that winter, we wouldn't have made it through the winter. Things were that dire at that time. And I understand that folks want to defend themselves, and that's why I'm still shooting for an F from the NRA.
Mr. Holden, do you believe that there's anything from a federal legislative standpoint that can be done to address the gun violence problem?
There are a tremendous number of actions that the federal government can take to reduce gun violence and increase gun safety. I started working with Moms Demand Action at the beginning of this campaign over a year ago. I was the first candidate in this race named as a gun sense candidate. They are providing the support and the framework for us to take real action. So we need universal background checks, we need to close the loophole, we need to educate people on firearm safety. We also have to allow the federal government to do research on the effects of gun violence on families and communities, and then make recommendations about how to make our children and our families safer. And that's simply not happening. One of the pieces of, when we need help in this district, Francis Rooney is absent, but he did pass one piece of legislation that he's very proud of, which is the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. It hasn't been passed by the Senate or signed into law, but this would undermine every state's ability to protect its citizens from gun violence, because if you had a concealed carry permit in one state, that means you could use that concealed carry permit in any state in the union, and that legislation must be halted. Thank you.
Mr. Truax, have you received a rating from the National Rifle Association, and have you received any contributions to your campaign from the National Rifle Association?
No, I have not received any money from any special interests whatsoever, and nor do I seek it out. As far as there's other even more stringent gun control laws that have found me that get me to sign their endorsement paperwork, and that goes straight to the garbage can when they send it to my house. So I have not sought that whatsoever.
Mr. Holden, have you received a rating from the National Rifle Association, and have you received any campaign contributions from the National Rifle Association?
I haven't received a rating, but if I got one, it would be an F. I will not accept NRA money in this campaign or ever in my career as a public servant. They are the heart of the problem of gun violence in this country. They are the single most successful political movement in the last 25 years. Now we see that they're involved with tampering of our elections through huge sums of money being washed through the NRA from Russia. This is not an organization that we can trust. When people like President H.W. Bush resign their lifetime NRA memberships, we know that they're on the wrong track. I was trained in firearm safety.